VIP woman throws food at black waitress, not knowing her employer was the mafia boss. The bustling atmosphere of the upscale restaurant filled the air as waiters and waitresses hurried between tables, balancing plates of gourmet dishes. The soft glow of chandeliers illuminated the elegant setting, but amid all the luxury and opulence, Maya was invisible. As a black waitress at a high-end restaurant, Maya had grown used to the whispers and subtle glares. She had learned to keep her head down, serve the wealthy clientele with a smile, and never draw attention to herself. But tonight, she had no choice. The VIP table, where the wealthiest of the wealthy dined, had just seated a new party. Maya recognized the woman immediately. Her platinum blonde hair, designer dress, and diamond-studded earrings made her stand out even in a room full of the elite. The woman was known for her sharp tongue and high standards, but Maya had never imagined she would be on the receiving end of it. As she approached the table with a tray of appetizers, the woman looked her up and down, a smirk playing on her lips. "Is this really the best you can do?" the VIP woman sneered, her voice dripping with disdain. Maya held her breath, trying to stay composed, but she could feel the sting of the insult deep in her chest. "I'm sorry, ma'am," Maya replied quietly, forcing a smile as she set the appetizers down on the table. The woman rolled her eyes, clearly unimpressed, and as Maya turned to leave, something flew through the air. The sound of a loud splat echoed in the room, followed by shocked gasps. A plate of pasta had been thrown across the table, hitting Maya squarely in the chest. The rich sauce splattered across her uniform, staining it instantly. "You're a disgrace," the VIP woman spat, her voice sharp. "Get this trash out of here." Maya stood frozen, humiliated, her face burning with shame as the laughter of the guests around the table filled her ears. Her hands trembled as she tried to wipe the sauce off her clothes, but it only made things worse. The room seemed to close in on her as the woman continued to mock her, the other guests joining in with their snickers and whispers. In that moment, Maya felt small, invisible, like she was nothing more than a servant. She had been humiliated in front of some of the most powerful people in the city. Just as she thought she might crumble, a deep voice cut through the laughter. "Is there a problem here?" All eyes turned toward the entrance, where a tall, imposing figure stood. He was dressed in a black suit, his presence commanding attention. The man's eyes scanned the room with a cold, calculating gaze. He was no ordinary guest. He was the mafia boss, the owner of the restaurant, and the last person anyone expected to show up in the middle of a dinner rush. His gaze landed on Maya, and then slowly, it shifted to the VIP woman. She faltered, her smirk fading as she realized who had just entered the room. The laughter died down as the mafia boss took a few slow steps toward the table, his eyes never leaving the woman who had just humiliated his staff. He looked at her for a long moment, then turned his attention to Maya. "Are you okay?" His voice was calm, almost too calm, as if he was in complete control of the situation. Maya could barely speak, her voice trembling as she nodded, too shocked to form words. The mafia boss looked back at the VIP woman. "I think you owe her an apology," he said, his tone low and dangerous. The room went silent. The VIP woman's eyes widened, and she stammered, unsure of what to do next. Her mind raced, but the mafia boss didn't wait for her to respond. With one swift motion, he reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone, making a call that would change everything. The tension in the room was palpable as the mafia boss spoke quietly into the phone. No one knew who was on the other end, but it was clear that the situation had escalated beyond anyone's control. "You're fired," the mafia boss said, his voice as cold as ice. "And don't bother coming back." The VIP woman's face turned pale, her eyes darting around the room in disbelief. She opened her mouth to protest, but no words came out. The mafia boss turned back to Maya, his expression softening. "You've done nothing wrong," he said. "Go clean up. You're dismissed for the night." Maya blinked, still trying to process what had just happened. The mafia boss had just humiliated the woman who had thrown food at her, and in front of everyone. The room was silent, the tension hanging in the air like a thick fog. No one moved, but Maya knew something had just changed. She could feel it in her bones. Her life would never be the same again. The power had shifted, and for the first time that night, she felt seen. Maya stood in the kitchen, trying to scrub the sauce out of her uniform as quickly as possible. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from the shock of what had just happened. The humiliation she had endured, the way the entire restaurant had laughed at her, it all seemed like a distant nightmare now. She kept replaying the moment over and over in her head. The moment when the Mafia boss had walked in and completely changed the dynamics. She had never expected anything like it. The sight of him, so calm, so powerful, standing there in front of the table, had taken her breath away. The way he had spoken, with such authority and confidence, left no room for doubt. Maya wasn't sure if it was the shock of the situation or the way he made her feel seen for the first time in her life, but it shook her to the core. As she finished wiping down her uniform, she heard the door to the kitchen open behind her. She turned quickly, and there he was, the Mafia boss. His presence filled the room, almost as if the air itself shifted when he stepped in. He looked at her for a moment, his piercing eyes taking in the sight of her, trying to clean the mess. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice softer than she had imagined. Maya swallowed, still feeling the sting of everything that had happened. She nodded, but her voice caught in her throat. "I'm okay, sir." The Mafia boss stepped closer, his eyes narrowing slightly. "That woman doesn't deserve to treat you like that." His words were calm, but there was an undeniable fire behind them. Maya couldn't help but feel a spark of something inside her, something she hadn't felt in years: hope. She had never imagined that someone like him would care about someone like her. She had worked in this restaurant for months, always invisible, always dismissed. But in that moment, the man who owned the place, who held so much power, was looking at her as if she mattered. He placed a hand on her shoulder, and Maya felt the weight of it, not as a burden, but as a gesture of solidarity. "Don't let people like that bring you down," he said, his tone low and sincere. "You've got more dignity than they'll ever understand." His words, simple as they were, struck something deep inside her. For the first time, she felt a sense of pride in who she was. The shame from earlier melted away as she stood taller, feeling the weight of his support. The Mafia boss studied her for a moment longer, as if weighing something in his mind. Then he spoke again, his voice firm. "I don't tolerate people treating my staff like that. I'm going to make sure she never steps foot in this restaurant again. And I'm going to make sure she understands what real respect looks like." Maya blinked, still in disbelief. She had never imagined that the man she had seen in the news, the notorious Mafia boss, would be someone who cared so much about her well-being. "Thank you," Maya whispered, her voice barely audible. The Mafia boss gave her a small nod, his expression softening just slightly. "Go home for the night, Maya. You've earned it." He turned to leave, but then paused and looked back at her. "I expect you to stand up for yourself. Don't let anyone make you feel small again." And with that, he walked out, leaving Maya standing there, stunned, in the quiet kitchen. The world outside had shifted. Maya felt a sense of empowerment she had never known before. The laughter of the guests, the sting of the food in her face, it all seemed like a distant memory now. She had a new purpose, a new strength she never realized she had. As she gathered her things to leave, she felt her head held higher, her heart stronger. The night wasn't over, and neither was her story. Maya knew that from this moment on, nothing would ever be the same. As she stepped out of the kitchen and into the cool night air, she realized she had more than just a job. She had her dignity, and for the first time, she had someone who would fight for her. She walked to her car, the weight of the events of the evening still sinking in. What had happened tonight wasn't just about a moment of humiliation. It was about a turning point in her life. Maya had just taken her first step toward something bigger, something better. And it was all thanks to the man who had shown her that sometimes, even the most powerful people can have a heart. Maya woke up the next morning with a lingering sense of disbelief. She hadn't been able to sleep much the night before, her mind replaying every moment from the restaurant. It was like a dream. She had spent her whole life feeling invisible, always on the outside looking in. Yet, the night before, someone had not only seen her, but had actually defended her. The words from the Mafia boss echoed in her mind. "Don't let anyone make you feel small again." As the sun filtered through her bedroom window, she tried to focus on the reality of what had happened, but everything still felt surreal. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand, breaking her reverie. She picked it up to see a message from her best friend, Lila. "Are you okay? I heard what happened last night. I can't believe it." Maya smiled softly, her fingers tapping out a quick reply. I'm okay. I'm just trying to process everything. She hit send, then put the phone down. As much as she appreciated Lila's concern, there was still so much she didn't know about the Mafia boss, Luca, or what his actions meant for her future. The thought of seeing him again made her heart race. She had heard rumors about him, stories of his ruthlessness and his empire that stretched far beyond this restaurant. Yet, there was something undeniably genuine in the way he had stood up for her, something she hadn't expected from someone with so much power. Her phone buzzed again, and this time it was a call. The name on the screen made her stomach flip. Luca. Taking a deep breath, she answered. Maya, good morning. His voice came through the phone, calm and steady. I hope you're feeling better after last night. Maya's heart skipped. I'm fine, thank you. She replied, her voice softer than she intended. I wanted to check in on you, Luca continued. I know last night was unexpected, but I wanted to make sure you know I meant what I said. No one will treat you like that again. Maya felt a wave of warmth, something she hadn't felt in a long time. I appreciate that, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't expect that, especially not from you. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Well, Maya, I'm not what most people think, Luca said after a moment. And neither are you. I've seen how hard you work, how much dignity you carry, even when others try to tear you down. That's rare. It's worth protecting. Maya's chest tightened. She didn't know what to say. She had always believed she was just another face in the crowd. I'm going to offer you a chance, Maya, Luca continued, breaking her thoughts. I want you to come work for me. Not in the restaurant. I have other things, other opportunities where you won't be treated like just another employee. I want someone who knows what respect means, who knows how to stand tall when others would crush them. The words hit her like a wave. Her mind raced. This was more than just a job offer. This was an invitation into a world she had never imagined, one of power, danger, and something she couldn't yet name. Why me? She asked, her voice full of wonder and suspicion. Luca's reply was slow, deliberate. Because you're stronger than you realize, Maya. People like us, those who've been underestimated, we make the best allies. Maya swallowed hard, unsure of what to say next. I'm not sure what this means, but I'll consider it. She paused, then added, but I don't know anything about your world. Luca's chuckle was warm. You'll learn. I'll make sure of it. Just think about it, all right? I'll have someone reach out to you. The call ended, leaving Maya with a million questions swirling in her head. She sat there, staring at the phone in her hand, trying to process what had just happened. The world as she knew it had just shifted. Later that day, Maya met Lila for coffee at their favorite spot, a small cafe tucked away on a quiet street. Lila was already waiting, her eyes wide with excitement when Maya sat down. Okay, spill it. What happened? I saw the video online. Everyone's talking about it. Maya sighed, running a hand through her hair. I don't know what to say. He actually stood up for me. The Mafia boss, Luca. Lila raised an eyebrow. Wait, you mean the Mafia boss who owns that restaurant? The one who's always in the news? Maya nodded. Yeah, that's the one. I never thought someone like him would care about someone like me. But he told me not to let anyone make me feel small again. And then he offered me a job. Not at the restaurant, but somewhere else. Lila leaned forward, her eyes locked on Maya. Are you serious? A job with him? That's huge. Maya looked down at her coffee cup, feeling conflicted. I don't know, Lila. It's so far out of my league. I don't know if I can handle it. I don't even know what he wants from me. Lila's voice softened. Maya, this is your chance. You've worked so hard to get here. Why not take the chance? You never know what doors might open. Maya looked out the window, deep in thought. The idea of stepping into a world so different from anything she had ever known was terrifying, but it was also exciting. She wasn't sure if she was ready, but something inside her was telling her that this was the moment to make a choice. She took a deep breath. Maybe you're right, she said quietly. Maybe it's time to step up. The days following Luca's phone call felt like a whirlwind. Maya couldn't shake the thought of his offer. She knew her life had changed the night he had stepped into the restaurant. But now, as the reality of his words began to sink in, it felt almost too much to process. He had offered her a chance to step into a world far beyond the confines of the restaurant. At first, she had been unsure, even hesitant. But the more she thought about it, the more the idea of working for him seemed like an opportunity she couldn't ignore. She had spent years working in the background, blending into the shadows of the restaurant world, her identity invisible to those she served. But now, Luca was offering her a chance to stand in the light, to be someone more than just a waitress. She couldn't deny that the possibility of a new life was tempting. The following afternoon, Maya found herself standing outside a sleek, modern office building. In the heart of the city, her heart raced as she glanced at the address again, confirming that this was the place Luca had mentioned. She had arrived early, giving herself a few minutes to gather her thoughts before meeting him. The building itself was imposing, with large glass windows reflecting the sunlight in a way that made it look almost intimidating. Maya's palms were sweaty as she pressed the button for the elevator. As the doors closed and the elevator began its ascent, she could feel the weight of the decision she had made. She had been just a regular person, someone who blended in with the crowd. Now, she was about to walk into a world where power and influence ruled, and she was unsure of where she would fit in. The elevator chimed as it reached the top floor, and Maya stepped out into a sleek, minimalist lobby. A receptionist smiled at her as she walked past, directing her to a glass door at the end of the hall. She knocked softly and entered. Inside, Luca sat behind a massive desk, his sharp features illuminated by the soft glow of the overhead lights. He was dressed in a dark suit, his presence commanding attention the moment she stepped into the room. Maya felt a flutter in her chest as she took a seat across from him. "Maya," Luca said, his voice smooth and calm. "I'm glad you came." Maya nodded, unsure of what to say. She had never been in a situation like this before, and the tension in the air was palpable. Luca studied her for a moment before speaking again. "I know this is all new for you, but I want you to understand something. I didn't offer you this position because I think you'll be just another employee. I offered it because I see something in you. You're stronger than you realize." Maya felt a lump in her throat as his words sank in. No one had ever said anything like that to her before. She had always been told to stay quiet, to blend in, to not rock the boat. But Luca was offering her something different, something more. "I know you've had a hard time, Maya. We all have our battles," Luca continued, his eyes never leaving hers. "But what makes you different is that you've kept your dignity intact. That's not something many people can do." Maya felt a swell of emotion inside her, but she kept it in check. She had always prided herself on staying strong, on not letting the world break her. But hearing Luca say it, hearing someone recognize her strength, was something she had never experienced before. "I'm not asking you to make a decision today," Luca said, breaking her thoughts. "But I want you to think about what you want. I have the power to offer you a life where you're no longer invisible. A life where you can stand up for yourself and have the respect you deserve." Maya took a deep breath, looking out the window at the city skyline. It was hard to imagine a life where she wasn't just a waitress, where she wasn't being constantly judged for her job or her appearance. But the more she thought about it, the more she realized that this was an opportunity she couldn't afford to pass up. "I've been in this game a long time," Luca continued, his voice steady. "And I can tell when someone has the potential to go far. You do. But it's up to you whether or not you want to take that leap." Maya looked back at him, her heart pounding in her chest. "I don't know if I'm ready for something like this," she admitted. "I've spent so long just trying to survive." Luca smiled, a small, knowing smile. "No one's ever ready. But that's the point. You make yourself ready when you choose to step up." There was a long pause as Maya absorbed his words. She had always been the kind of person who played it safe, who avoided taking risks. But for the first time, she felt the urge to take a chance. "I want to try," she said, her voice stronger than she felt. "I want to take that chance." Luca nodded, his expression serious but approving. "Good. You're not going to regret this, Maya." As Maya left the office building, she felt a sense of weight lift off her shoulders. The decision was made. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was in control. She was no longer just a small part of someone else's world. She was taking the first steps into a new one, a world where she could finally be seen, respected, and valued. The future was uncertain, but Maya knew one thing for sure. She was no longer invisible. Maya stepped into her new office for the first time, her heart pounding with a mix of excitement and anxiety. She had made the decision to accept Luca's offer, but now, standing in this sleek, modern office space, she was starting to feel the weight of the choice. The building was nothing like the small apartment she had come from, or the restaurant she had spent the last few years working in. It was pristine, with glass walls that overlooked the bustling city below. Maya stood there for a moment, taking it all in, before walking to the desk that had been prepared for her. It was minimalistic, but polished. She took a seat and placed her bag on the side, still in disbelief that she was here. It felt like a dream, but the reality was sinking in. The door opened, and she quickly looked up. Luca entered, his presence as commanding as ever. His dark suit seemed to absorb the light in the room, and the sharpness in his gaze made Maya's stomach flutter. "Good morning, Maya." He greeted her with a small, approving smile. "How does it feel to finally be here?" Maya stood up, trying to keep her composure. "It's overwhelming," she admitted. "I never imagined I'd be in a place like this." Luca nodded, walking over to the window and looking out at the city. "This world can be overwhelming, but you've got something most people don't, your dignity. That's what sets you apart." Maya felt a warm flush spread through her chest. No one had ever spoken to her this way before. For so long, she had been invisible, just another person in the background, working tirelessly to survive. But Luca saw something in her. She wasn't sure what it was, but she was starting to believe in it. "I want to show you something," Luca continued, turning back to her. "Follow me." Maya followed him down the hallway, her shoes clicking softly against the polished floors. They passed several rooms, each one more luxurious than the last, until they reached a large conference room. It was sleek and sophisticated, with a long table in the center and chairs arranged neatly around it. "This is where the real decisions are made," Lucas said, gesturing to the room. "But it's not just about power. It's about influence. It's about understanding who you are and using that to make things happen." Maya looked at him, her mind racing. She had no idea what this world was really like, but she knew that it was bigger than anything she had ever known. "How do I fit into all of this?" she asked, her voice soft. Lucas smiled again, his gaze unwavering. "You fit in because you have something people like me respect. You've earned your place here, Maya. You just have to trust yourself." Maya's breath caught in her throat as she absorbed his words. It was hard to believe that this was her reality now. The woman who had been mocked, humiliated, and belittled for so long was now standing in a room where important decisions were made. It felt like a dream, but Luca's presence grounded her, reminding her that this was real. Over the next few weeks, Maya's life took on a new rhythm. She found herself working closely with Luca, helping with the business side of his empire. While she had initially thought the job would be about managing the day-to-day operations of a restaurant, it quickly became clear that Luca's world was far more complex. He was involved in everything, from real estate deals to negotiations with other powerful figures. Maya's role shifted as well. She was no longer just the quiet, overlooked waitress. She was learning the ropes of the business world, gaining the confidence and skills that came with being a part of Luca's inner circle. But with this new life came new challenges. Maya found herself navigating a world where trust was earned, and loyalty was everything. The people Luca surrounded himself with were not to be underestimated. Some were fiercely loyal, while others were only looking out for their own interests. There were moments of tension, moments where Maya wasn't sure if she could handle the weight of it all. But Luca was always there, offering guidance when she needed it, reminding her that she was capable of more than she realized. One afternoon, as Maya was reviewing a set of documents, Luca called her into his office. "We need to talk," he said, his voice serious. Maya stood up quickly and followed him into his private office. Luca was already sitting behind his desk, his expression unreadable. "I've been keeping an eye on you," he began. "I know you've been adjusting to everything, but I want to know how you're feeling about the work. Are you happy with the direction we're going?" Maya paused, unsure of what to say. She had been overwhelmed at first, but now, she felt more confident than ever. "I'm learning a lot," she said honestly. "It's different from anything I've ever done, but I'm starting to understand how everything fits together. I'm grateful for the opportunity." Lucas studied her for a moment, his eyes intense. "I knew you had the potential, Maya, but I also know that you're still figuring things out. There's more to this than just business. There's power, and there's respect. You've earned both, but it's up to you to take them." Maya nodded, understanding the weight of his words. This wasn't just about work. This was about stepping into a world where she could be someone more than just a victim of circumstances. She could be someone who controlled her own destiny. "I'm ready," she said, her voice steady. Lucas smiled, And for the first time, Maya felt truly seen. She wasn't just a waitress or someone trying to survive. She was a force to be reckoned with, and this was just the beginning. Maya stood at the edge of the balcony, staring out over the city skyline as the sun dipped below the horizon. The view was breathtaking, and for a moment, she allowed herself to simply enjoy the peace. But as the wind tousled her hair, a voice broke her thoughts. "You're doing well, Maya." Luca's voice was calm, steady, as always, but there was an edge to it, an intensity she had come to recognize. She turned to face him. He stood just a few feet away, watching her with his usual, inscrutable gaze. He wasn't the type to offer praise lightly, and for the first time, she felt the weight of his approval. "Thank you," she said, her voice soft, but there was pride in it, a new confidence that she hadn't had before. She had come a long way since that first day in his office. The world she had stepped into, the world of power and influence, was unlike anything she had known. But now, she was beginning to understand it, beginning to find her place in it. "You've got potential," Lucas said, his eyes narrowing slightly, as if evaluating her. "But there's more to learn, more to understand. The world we operate in isn't just about decisions and deals. It's about people, and people are unpredictable." Maya nodded, listening carefully. She had seen that side of things, seen the way power could shift in an instant, how loyalty could be tested, and how quickly things could fall apart. The days at the office had been intense, but each day had been a new lesson, a new challenge. She had learned how to navigate the delicate balance of business, how to read people, and how to understand the stakes. But the stakes were higher now. Luca had been patient, showing her the ropes, but there was an underlying tension. "I know I have a lot to learn," Maya replied, her gaze steady. "But I'm ready for it. I've been underestimated my whole life. I'm not letting that happen anymore." Luca smiled, though there was no warmth in it. "Good. Because things are about to get more complicated." Maya felt a chill run through her. She had been expecting that. The life she had stepped into wasn't one where things were ever simple. It was a world of constant change, where trust was fleeting and every decision carried weight. "You're going to meet some new people soon," Luca continued. "I need you to be ready." He paused, letting the words hang in the air before speaking again. "There are some who will challenge you, some who will try to push you around, but you stand your ground. You're not the same person you were before." Maya straightened, her posture firm. "I won't back down," she said, her voice unwavering. Luca studied her for a moment, his eyes narrowing slightly, as if considering something. "I know you won't." The next few days passed in a blur. Maya was thrust into a series of meetings and negotiations, all of which tested her resolve. She was learning quickly, adapting to the fast-paced world she had entered, but it wasn't without its challenges. Some of the people she met seemed to view her as an outsider, and she could feel their skepticism, the way they sized her up, wondering what someone like her was doing in this world. But Maya held her ground, refusing to let them see her doubt. Luca had made it clear that she had to earn her place, and she was determined to do just that. One afternoon, as she was reviewing a set of documents in her office, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Luca. "Meet me at the warehouse tonight. Bring your A-game." Her heart raced. She had no idea what was going on, but when Luca sent a message like that, it meant something important was happening. She quickly gathered her things and headed out. The warehouse was on the outskirts of the city, tucked away in a quieter part of town. It was large and industrial, a far cry from the sleek office building she had grown accustomed to. When she arrived, Luca was already there, standing by the entrance with a few of his men. His expression was serious, the usual calm replaced by something more intense. "You're here," he said, his eyes scanning her. "I need you to pay attention. Tonight, we're going to handle something delicate." Maya felt a knot tighten in her stomach. "What do you mean?" Luca's gaze hardened. "There are some loose ends we need to take care of. People who think they can cross us. People who need to be reminded of who they're dealing with." Maya took a deep breath, her nerves settling. This was it. This was the moment where she would see firsthand just how deep the world she was now a part of really went. "What do you need me to do?" she asked, her voice steady. Luca looked at her, his eyes filled with a sharp, calculating gaze. "I need you to watch and learn," he said, his voice low. "This is where power meets action. You'll see how things are handled." As the night unfolded, Maya watched in silence as Luca and his men dealt with the situation. The efficiency, the precision, It all unfolded in front of her like a carefully orchestrated performance. There was no hesitation, no second-guessing. They were in control, and they made sure everyone knew it. Maya watched, her mind racing as she absorbed everything. This was the world Luca had promised her, a world where power was everything and trust was a currency. As the night came to an end, and the men dispersed, Luca turned to her. "You did well," he said, his voice softening for the first time. "You've got the grit. Now you just need to trust yourself." Maya nodded, the weight of the night's events settling in. She had seen the darker side of the world Luca operated in, and though it was overwhelming, it felt strangely empowering. She wasn't just learning how to survive in this world. She was learning how to thrive. And she knew, with certainty, that this was only the beginning. Maya's phone buzzed in the middle of the night. She groggily reached for it, half expecting another late-night message from Luca. But this one was different. It was from a number she didn't recognize. "Meet me at the old warehouse. 2 a.m., don't be late." The message was blunt, with no further explanation. Maya's pulse quickened as she stared at the screen. It was strange. Luca had always been very specific when it came to meetings. This was different. There was something urgent in the message, something that made her stomach churn with unease. She hesitated for a moment. The clock read 1:30 a.m., and her mind raced with possibilities. Was this a test? Or had something gone wrong? Without another thought, she grabbed her coat and keys, her heart pounding in her chest. The old warehouse was on the outskirts of the city, a place Luca had mentioned before, a place where deals went down and people either walked away with what they came for, or they didn't. As she drove through the empty streets, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that she was stepping into something bigger than she was ready for. When she arrived, the warehouse loomed in front of her, its rusted steel doors standing like a silent sentinel in the dark. The air was thick with tension, and Maya's footsteps echoed in the empty space as she approached the entrance. She glanced around, but there was no sign of Luca or anyone else. The place felt abandoned, except for the dim light coming from the far corner of the warehouse. As she moved closer, she could make out a figure standing in the shadows. Luca. He was leaning against a stack of crates, his expression unreadable. His usual calm demeanor was gone, replaced by something darker, something that made Maya's throat tighten. "You're late," Luca said, his voice sharp. Maya swallowed. "I came as soon as I got your message," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. Luca pushed off the crates and walked toward her, his footsteps heavy against the concrete floor. "I'm not here to waste time. Something's gone wrong, and I need you to be ready." His eyes locked onto hers, and for the first time since she had met him, Maya saw a flicker of something unfamiliar, something raw in his gaze. "What's going on?" Maya asked, trying to mask the nervousness in her voice. Luca didn't answer right away. Instead, he motioned for her to follow him deeper into the warehouse. They moved through the darkened space, the faint sound of distant machinery humming in the background. "There's a situation," Luca finally said, his voice low and serious. "A man we trusted has betrayed us. He's been feeding information to our competitors, and now he's got to pay the price." Maya's heart skipped a beat. She had heard the rumors about the Mafia's methods, but hearing it spoken so casually, so coldly, made her skin crawl. "And you want me to help?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Lucas stopped in his tracks, turning to face her. "You're not going to help. You're going to watch," he said, his tone almost clinical. "You need to understand the reality of this world. The choices we make are not always clean. They're not always easy, but they're necessary." Maya stood frozen, the weight of his words sinking in. She had been warned. She had seen the power that Luca wielded, but this was different. This was raw, dangerous. "This man's betrayal goes deeper than we thought," Luca continued, his gaze never leaving hers. "He's played us all for fools. But tonight, that ends." He turned and gestured to the shadows where two of Luca's men stood, their faces obscured by the darkness. Maya felt her stomach twist as one of them stepped forward, dragging a man with him. The man was bruised, blood dripping from his nose, his hands bound behind his back. Maya's breath caught in her throat as she realized who it was. It was Tony, one of the people who had worked alongside her in the office. He had always been friendly, if a little distant, but now, seeing him like this, tied up and beaten, it sent a chill through her. Luca stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "Tony." he said, his voice cold as ice. You thought you could play both sides. Now you're going to learn that betrayal comes with consequences. Tony's eyes were wide with fear, but he didn't say a word. He knew what was coming. Maya looked away, her stomach turning. She didn't want to see this. She didn't want to be a part of it. But Luca's hand on her shoulder stopped her. Watch, he ordered. Maya's heart pounded in her chest as she watched Luca's men begin to move. The cold, efficient way they worked, the way they handled Tony without hesitation, it was all too much. Maya felt a lump form in her throat. This wasn't what she had expected when she agreed to work for Luca. This wasn't the world she had imagined. The moment dragged on, the tension thick in the air, until finally, Luca spoke again. Let him go, he said, his voice low but authoritative. Maya glanced up in shock, her heart racing. Luca turned to her with a small, approving smile. This is how power works, Maya, he said softly. It's not just about taking control. It's about knowing when to show mercy. Tony was released, stumbling to his feet. His eyes locked with Maya's for a brief moment, and she could see the fear in them. Go, Lucas said, and Tony scrambled to his feet, fleeing into the night. As the warehouse fell silent, Maya looked at Luca, her mind racing. She had witnessed something tonight that had changed her forever. She had seen the ruthless side of the man she worked for, and though she was shaken, she also knew something deep down. Luca had trusted her to witness this, to learn from it. And for better or worse, she knew she wasn't turning back. The morning after the intense events at the warehouse, Maya found herself still haunted by the choices she had witnessed, the decisions Luca had made, and the ruthless efficiency with which they had been carried out. Her heart was still heavy, yet there was an undeniable shift in her. She had crossed a threshold that couldn't be undone, and there was no going back now. As she sat in her office, sorting through the endless stacks of paperwork Luca had handed her, she felt her phone vibrate. It was another message from him. Meet me at the office in an hour. I need you to handle something. Maya swallowed hard. There was no longer any doubt in her mind. This world she had entered was not for the faint of heart, but it was her world now, for better or worse. She took a deep breath and got ready, steeling herself for whatever was coming next. When Maya arrived at Luca's office, the mood was noticeably different from the calm, controlled atmosphere she had grown accustomed to. The air was thick with tension, and she immediately noticed the presence of several unfamiliar faces. Men who carried themselves like they owned the room, their sharp suits and cold eyes a stark contrast to the warmth of the office. Luca was standing by the window, his back to her, but he turned when he heard the door open. His usual calm demeanor was still there, but Maya could see the flicker of something darker in his eyes. Maya, he greeted her, his voice steady. I need you to take charge of this situation. Maya stepped forward, her curiosity piqued. What's going on? She asked, glancing at the men who stood in silence around the room. Luca gestured to one of them, a tall, broad-shouldered man with a scar running down the side of his face. This is Tony's brother, Vincent, Luca explained. He's here because we need to make sure Tony understands there are no second chances. Maya's heart skipped a beat. You want me to handle this? She asked, incredulous. Luca nodded. You've seen how we operate. Now, I need you to be the one who brings the message home. Maya's eyes widened in shock. But I've never. I know you haven't. Luca cut in, his voice calm yet firm. But you're more capable than you realize, Maya. You've learned everything you need to. Now it's time to put it into action. She stood there for a moment, processing his words. This wasn't just about observing anymore. Luca was giving her control over the situation. The weight of his trust in her was almost suffocating. I'll guide you through it, Luca added, his voice softening just a little. But you need to step up. This is your chance. Maya's breath caught in her throat. She had always kept a low profile, staying in the background, never drawing attention to herself. But Luca was right. This was her moment to show that she could handle the responsibility. She had already seen what this world was capable of, and now, it was time for her to prove that she belonged in it. Maya squared her shoulders and nodded. I'm ready. Luca's eyes studied her for a moment, a hint of approval flickering in his gaze. Good, he said. Let's make sure this is done right. The meeting went quickly from there. Luca laid out the plan. They needed to ensure that Vincent delivered a clear message to Tony about loyalty, about the consequences of crossing the line. Maya would be the one to deliver the final warning to Vincent, showing him that this wasn't just business, it was personal. As she walked out of the office with Vincent at her side, she could feel the weight of what she was about to do settling in her chest. The warehouse loomed ahead, just as it had the night before. It was cold, dark, and silent, a fitting backdrop for what was about to unfold. Vincent led the way, his footsteps heavy on the concrete. When they entered, Luca was already there, standing by a table where Tony's brother, Vincent, would face the consequences of his betrayal. The room was thick with the tension of unspoken words. Maya took a deep breath and walked over to the table, standing in front of Vincent. "This isn't just about business," she said, her voice steady. "This is about respect. And once it's lost, there's no getting it back." Vincent met her gaze, his eyes hard and calculating, but there was a flicker of uncertainty beneath his tough exterior. Maya could see it. He was starting to realize just how serious this was. "You don't want to make the same mistake your brother made," Maya continued, her voice unwavering. "Loyalty is everything. Betrayal? That's a line you don't cross. Not with Luca. Not with us." There was a long pause before Vincent finally spoke. "I get it," he said, his voice rough. "But you don't know what Tony was up against. You don't know what he had to do to survive." Maya shook her head. "We all make choices. And those choices have consequences. Your brother made his. Now it's time to pay the price." She stepped back, her eyes locking with Luca's across the room. He gave her a small nod, the slightest hint of approval in his gaze. Vincent stood there, looking at Maya, realizing that this was no longer about survival. It was about respect. And the respect in this world was earned, not given. As Vincent turned to leave, Maya felt the gravity of the situation settle over her. She had delivered the message. She had shown that she was part of this world, a world where loyalty was everything and power was held by those who were willing to do what it took to maintain it. As she left the warehouse, Maya's heart was still pounding, but it was no longer out of fear. It was out of certainty. She was in this world now, for better or worse, and she was ready to make her mark. Maya walked into Luca's office, her mind still reeling from everything that had happened over the past few days. The events at the warehouse had shaken her to the core, but they had also shown her just how much power Luca wielded, and how far she had come since that first day in the restaurant. She wasn't the same person anymore. No longer just the quiet, invisible waitress. She had stepped into a world of high stakes and ruthless decisions. As she entered the office, Luca was sitting behind his desk, the usual calm in his demeanor still there, though she could sense a slight change in him as well. He had been busy, and Maya knew that something big was about to happen. "Come in, Maya." Luca greeted her with a nod. His voice was calm, but there was a hint of something darker beneath it. Maya took a deep breath and sat down across from him. "You wanted to see me?" she asked, her voice steady despite the nerves that were starting to creep up. Luca leaned forward slightly, his eyes narrowing as he studied her. "You've done well so far," he said, his tone measured. "But we're entering a new phase now. The kind of phase where your loyalty will be tested. And I need to know that you're ready for that." Maya's heart raced, but she kept her composure. This wasn't a surprise. Luca had made it clear from the beginning that she was not just here to observe, but to be part of something much bigger, something dangerous. "I'm ready," she replied, her voice firm. Luca studied her for a long moment before speaking again. "I want you to accompany me to a meeting tomorrow. There are some business associates I need you to meet. People who can help us expand our reach. But they won't just hand it to us. You'll need to prove your worth, just like I had to." Maya nodded, understanding the gravity of what he was saying. This was more than just another day in the office. This was about cementing her place in this world. "What do I need to do?" she asked, her gaze never wavering from Luca's. He smiled slightly, the expression unreadable. "Just be yourself," he said. "But understand this. These people are not like us. They don't play by the same rules. And you'll have to be ready to stand your ground." Maya's mind raced as she processed his words. She had seen what Luca was capable of, his calm demeanor hiding a ruthless, calculating nature. But could she match that? Could she navigate this new world with the same cold efficiency? The thought made her stomach churn, but she pushed it aside. She had come too far to back down now. "I won't let you down," she said, her voice stronger than before. Luca leaned back in his chair, his expression softening just a little. "I know you won't. You've got more potential than you realize, Maya. Don't forget that." The next day, Maya found herself in an unfamiliar part of the city, standing outside a large, gated compound. The buildings were more industrial, the streets less polished than the areas she was used to. It was a stark contrast to the sleek, controlled environment of Luca's office. This was a different world, one where trust had to be earned in more concrete ways. As she followed Luca inside, she noticed the men standing guard at every corner. Their eyes followed her movements as she passed, their expressions unreadable. Inside the building, the atmosphere was tense, the air thick with cigarette smoke and hushed conversations. It was clear that this was a place where deals were made, but not in the same way Luca operated. These were people who thrived on intimidation, on power. Maya felt the weight of their gazes, and for the first time since joining Luca's world, she felt small. But she couldn't let that show. She had to prove herself. Luca led her through the dimly lit hallways until they reached a large room at the back. Inside, a group of men sat at a long table, their eyes shifting toward Luca as he entered. They were older, their faces hardened by years of experience in this world. Maya immediately recognized the power in the room. "Gentlemen," Luca said, his voice calm but commanding. "This is Maya. She's going to be working with us from now on." Maya stood silently beside him, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew this was her moment. One wrong move, and she could be dismissed just as easily as she had been given this chance. "Nice to meet you," one of the men said, his tone dripping with condescension. "We'll see if you live up to the hype." Maya kept her face neutral, refusing to let his words faze her. She had seen the way Luca handled people like this. She had learned from him, and now it was her turn to put it into practice. As the meeting went on, Maya observed, listening carefully to every word exchanged. She could feel the tension building, the subtle games being played behind the scenes. Every word, every gesture, seemed calculated. She realized that this was how these people operated, not just through force, but through subtle manipulation and control. Luca's voice cut through the tension when he spoke again, addressing one of the men across the table. "I don't think you understand the gravity of the situation," Luca said, his voice low and steady. "If you want to continue with us, you'll need to prove that you're worth our time." The man shifted in his seat, but Luca's gaze never wavered. It was clear who was in charge here. Maya stood tall, her confidence growing as she saw the dynamic unfold before her. This was the world she had entered, and she was starting to see the strings being pulled, the way people moved and shifted within it. By the time the meeting concluded, Maya felt like she had gained something important, an understanding of how Luca's world truly worked. It wasn't just about brute force or intimidation. It was about power, control, and knowing how to use both to your advantage. As they left the building, Luca turned to Maya. "You did well," he said, his voice low. "You've learned more today than most people do in years." Maya smiled, her confidence now solidified. "I'm just getting started," she replied. And for the first time, she truly believed it. The days following the meeting with Luca's business associates felt like a blur. To Maya, she had learned more about the world she had stepped into than she had ever expected. The power plays, the subtle manipulations, the tension in the air, it was all so much to process. Yet, despite the weight of it all, Maya felt a strange sense of purpose. She was no longer the person she had been when she first walked into Luca's office months ago. She had become someone new, someone stronger, someone who was learning how to navigate the complexities of power and influence. But with this newfound strength came new challenges. The days grew longer, the stakes higher, and Maya was now more involved in the operations than ever before. She had proven herself in the meetings, but Luca's world wasn't just about sitting at a table and making deals. It was about understanding who you could trust and who was a threat. One evening, as Maya sat in her office going through reports, the door opened, and Luca walked in. He looked more serious than usual, his jaw clenched in a way that made Maya instinctively sit up straighter. "Maya," he said, his voice steady but tinged with urgency. "We have a problem. One of our competitors has made a move. They're trying to steal our territory, and I need you to be ready." Maya stood, feeling her heart rate pick up. This was it. She had seen Luca handle his business with ruthless precision, but now, she was about to see it firsthand. "What do you need me to do?" she asked, her voice steady, though her pulse quickened. Luca looked at her, his eyes dark with resolve. "I need you to come with me. Tonight, we deal with this. And I need you to understand the importance of what's about to happen. It's not just about business anymore. It's personal. Maya nodded, her mind racing. She had been prepared for this moment, or so she thought. But there was a coldness to Luca's words that unsettled her. He turned and motioned for her to follow him. The two of them walked through the halls, the air thick with tension. Luca's men, who had been by his side for years, were already gathering in the parking garage. Maya had seen them before, but tonight, their presence felt different. They were more serious, more alert. This wasn't just another business deal. This was a message. As they drove to the location, Maya could feel the weight of the night pressing down on her. The quiet hum of the car's engine was the only sound between them, and Luca remained silent, his thoughts clearly focused on the task ahead. They arrived at an old, abandoned warehouse on the edge of town. The building looked like it had been left to decay for years, its windows boarded up, its rusted doors barely hanging on their hinges. It was a place where no questions would be asked, where no one would hear what happened inside. Maya stepped out of the car, her nerves tightening. This was where it all came together. Luca led her inside, and she immediately noticed the presence of more men, his men, lined up and waiting. They stood in the shadows, their eyes scanning every corner, every entrance. It was clear that whatever was going to happen here tonight was not a simple confrontation. It was something much more calculated. "This is where we show them who's in charge," Luca said, his voice low. "We're not just protecting our business, Maya. We're sending a message." He turned to her, his gaze intense. "Tonight, you'll learn what it really means to be in control." As Luca spoke, Maya felt the weight of his words settle on her shoulders. She wasn't just a spectator anymore. She was part of this world, and tonight, she would understand it fully. They moved deeper into the warehouse, where a group of men stood around a table. In the center was one of Luca's competitors, a man who had been making moves behind the scenes, trying to take territory that rightfully belonged to Luca. The man was seated, his hands bound behind him, his face bruised from a previous encounter. Luca stood in front of him, his face expressionless. "You've been a problem," Luca said, his voice calm but filled with authority. "And problems need to be dealt with." The man shifted, his eyes darting between Luca and the men surrounding him. "You think you can intimidate me?" he spat, his voice hoarse. "You don't know who you're dealing with." Luca's eyes narrowed. "I know exactly who I'm dealing with," he said quietly. "And you've made a grave mistake." The tension in the room was palpable as Luca's men stood watch, ready for whatever came next. Maya felt the weight of the moment, pressed down on her chest. She had been in the room for many confrontations before, but this one felt different. This was the heart of the empire, where decisions were made, where power was asserted. Luca's men moved swiftly, efficiently. They knew what had to be done. The man's fate had already been sealed. Maya watched in silence as the events unfolded before her. It was a harsh reality, one that she had known in theory but had never fully understood until now. As Luca and his men dealt with the situation, Maya stood back, her mind spinning. This was the world she had entered, a world where loyalty was everything, and power was maintained at any cost. When it was over, Luca turned to her. His expression had softened, but there was still a coldness to it. "You see now," he said quietly. "This is how we protect what's ours." Maya nodded slowly, her heart still racing. She had seen the depth of Luca's world, the lengths to which he would go to ensure control. And as she stood there, in the aftermath of it all, she knew that her place in this world was no longer uncertain. She had crossed the line, and there was no going back. The days following the meeting at the warehouse were quiet, but the weight of what Maya had witnessed weighed heavily on her mind. She had seen Luca in full control, executing decisions with an unshakable calm. But the question still lingered. Was this truly the world she wanted to be a part of? She had already made the choice to stand by him, to accept his invitation into his empire, but each step forward felt like stepping further away from the life she had known. The sharp contrast between the world she came from and the world Luca was showing her made her question everything. Yet, deep down, she knew there was no turning back. She had already made her place in this world. The phone rang, snapping Maya out of her thoughts. She picked it up, her heart racing as she saw Luca's name on the screen. "Maya, I need you at the office in an hour." Luca's voice was direct, without explanation. "We have another situation." Maya swallowed, feeling a familiar mix of apprehension and resolve. She had come to understand that situations in Luca's world were never simple, but This was her chance to prove she was more than just a bystander in this dangerous game. She arrived at Luca's office, her footsteps echoing through the marble hallways as she made her way inside. The usual calm, elegant setting of the office was now overshadowed by a tense atmosphere. Luca was standing by the window, his back to her, watching the city below. When she entered, he turned to face her. His expression was hard, his eyes filled with a quiet intensity that sent a chill through her. "We have a problem," he said without preamble. "One of our allies has been leaking information. They've crossed the line." Maya's heart sank. She had seen the consequences of betrayal firsthand, but hearing that it was one of their own made it even more unsettling. "Who is it?" she asked, her voice steady despite the growing unease in her chest. Luca's eyes darkened, and for a moment, he said nothing. Then he spoke. "One of our suppliers, someone we've trusted for years. But now they've made the mistake of betraying us." He stepped toward her, his gaze unwavering. "I need you to come with me tonight. We're going to make sure they understand the cost of their actions." Maya nodded slowly. She had been prepared for moments like this, but it still felt different every time. Betrayal was never easy to witness, especially when it came from someone they had relied on for so long. "I understand," Maya said, her voice calm. Luca gave her a sharp nod and motioned for her to follow him. As they left the office, Maya noticed the shift in Luca's demeanor. There was a coldness in his eyes, a dangerous focus that sent a shiver down her spine. This wasn't just a business transaction. It was personal, and Luca wasn't going to let anyone undermine the empire he had built. They arrived at the supplier's warehouse late in the evening. It was a dimly lit building, tucked away in the industrial part of town, where the shadows seemed to swallow everything whole. Luca's men were already there, waiting for him. The air was thick with tension, and Maya could feel the weight of what was about to unfold. As they entered, the supplier, an older man, disheveled and nervous, was waiting for them. He didn't look surprised, but there was a palpable fear in his eyes. He knew what was coming. Luca wasted no time. "You've betrayed us," he said, his voice low and controlled, but the power in it was undeniable. "And now you'll pay the price for it." The supplier stammered, his hands trembling. "Luca, please. I didn't mean to. I thought I could make a better deal. I'm sorry. I didn't want this." Luca took a step forward, his expression unreadable. "You should have thought about that before you betrayed us," he said, his voice cold as ice. "Now, you'll learn that loyalty is something you earn, not something you play with." Maya stood at the edge of the room, watching. She had seen this side of Luca before, but every time, it felt more real, more intense. There was no hesitation in him, no second-guessing. He was decisive, and everyone around him knew it. The supplier's protests fell on deaf ears as Luca's men closed in, swiftly and efficiently. Maya turned her head away, not wanting to see the details unfold. She had learned long ago that in Luca's world, mercy was not an option when it came to betrayal. "This is how we handle things here," Luca said, his voice carrying the weight of years of experience. Maya couldn't help but shudder at the finality in his words. This was Luca's empire, and in this world, loyalty was everything. As they left the warehouse, Luca's silence was deafening. Maya couldn't bring herself to speak, unsure of what to say. The events of the night had left her shaken, but she knew better than to show weakness. Luca finally spoke when they were in the car. "You did well tonight," he said, his voice quiet, but with a hint of something approving in it. Maya looked at him, her mind still racing. "I was just following your lead," she replied, her voice steady. Luca looked at her, a small, rare smile playing at the corners of his lips. "You're learning fast, Maya. That's what I need." As they drove back to the city, Maya sat in silence, the weight of the night's events settling over her. She had seen the cost of betrayal, the price of loyalty, and the cold precision with which Luca ran his empire. She was no longer just a bystander in this world. She was part of it now, and there was no turning back. The days following the warehouse incident felt heavier for Maya. Each time she closed her eyes, she could still see the supplier's face, the fear in his eyes, the way he cowered in front of Luca's unyielding presence. It wasn't the first time she had witnessed Luca's power, but something about that moment, the coldness of it, seemed to linger in her mind longer than the others. But Maya wasn't one to dwell on the past, especially not now. She had made her choice. She had walked into Luca's world willingly, and she couldn't back out now. Not after everything she had seen, everything she had learned. She was in too deep. It was late one evening when Luca called her into his office. She had just finished a long day of meetings, and her mind was already racing through the next steps of their business. But when she saw Luca standing by the window, his hands clasped behind his back, she knew something was different. Maya, Luca began without turning to face her. I've been thinking about your place in all this. You've shown yourself to be more than just an observer. But there's one thing left for you to truly understand. Maya's pulse quickened. His tone wasn't harsh, but there was a weight to it that made her uneasy. She could tell this wasn't just another task. This was something bigger. What do you mean? She asked, stepping closer. Luca finally turned to face her, his eyes calculating, measuring. The thing about this world, Maya, is that it's never about what's right or wrong. It's about power, loyalty, and control. If you want to survive, if you want to thrive here, you have to own that power. You have to wield it like it's yours by right. Maya felt a knot form in her stomach. She had seen the brutality of this world firsthand, but hearing Luca speak so openly about it made it even more real. There was no escape. She was part of it now. I'm not asking you to do anything you're not capable of, Luca continued. But I need you to take the next step. He paused, his eyes narrowing slightly. I'm sending you to handle a situation. It's time for you to prove you can do what needs to be done. Maya's breath caught in her throat. This was the moment when she could no longer just follow Luca's lead. She would have to take charge, make the decisions, and live with the consequences. What's the situation? She asked, her voice steady, though inside, her heart raced. There's someone who's been making moves behind our backs, Luca replied, his tone hardening. A rival group that's been encroaching on our territory. We've dealt with their interference before, but this time, they've crossed a line. I'm giving you the job of dealing with them. Maya nodded slowly, processing his words. She had always known this day would come. The day when she would have to take responsibility for the darker side of the business. It wasn't something she wanted to think about, but it was something she had to do. How do you want me to handle it? She asked, already knowing the answer. Luca's gaze held hers, unflinching. Make them understand, he said, his voice low and final. Make sure they know that we don't tolerate betrayal. And don't let them walk away. There was no mistaking the finality in his words. Maya understood exactly what he meant. I'll do it, she said, her voice firm. Luca's expression softened slightly, but there was still an underlying tension in his eyes. I know you will. Just remember, in this world, mercy is a luxury we can't afford. Maya left his office, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts. The weight of what was about to happen sat heavily on her shoulders. She had never imagined that she would be tasked with such a thing, but here she was. The world she had entered demanded loyalty above all else, and now it was her turn to prove that she could enforce it. The next day, Maya drove to the location Luca had given her. It was a warehouse on the outskirts of town, isolated, away from prying eyes. The perfect place to send a message. When she arrived, Luca's men were already there, waiting for her. They had all been part of this world long enough to know the rules, to know what needed to be done. Maya had learned from the best, but now it was her turn to take the lead. She stood in front of the warehouse, taking a deep breath. This was no longer about following orders. This was about owning her place in the world Luca had brought her into. She walked inside, her steps purposeful, her mind focused. The men inside the warehouse looked at her as she entered, their faces unreadable. But they didn't question her. They knew who she was now. Maya stood in front of the group of men who had been causing problems for Luca. They were nervous, eyes shifting, unsure of what was about to happen. She could see the fear in their eyes. They knew they were in trouble. You've been warned, Maya said, her voice steady but full of authority. You've crossed a line, and now you're going to pay the price. She stepped forward, her eyes scanning the room. This was no longer just about business. This was personal. You've been given chances. You've ignored them. Now, there will be no more. The tension in the room grew thick as the men exchanged nervous glances. Maya could feel the weight of the decision she was about to make. This was the moment that would define her in this world. She was no longer just a part of Luca's empire. She was the one making the decisions. The one showing them what happened when loyalty was broken. You'll leave now, Maya said, her voice cold. And you'll never come back. The men looked at her, their fear evident, but they didn't move. They knew better than to defy someone in her position. Go, Maya repeated, her voice unwavering. Slowly, they backed away, leaving the warehouse without a word. As the door closed behind them, Maya let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. She had done it. She had made the decision, taken the reins, and made sure that the message was clear. This was her world now, and no one would question her place in it. The weeks that followed the confrontation at the warehouse were a whirlwind for Maya. Each day, she was more deeply entrenched in the world Luca had shown her. She was no longer the unsure woman who had first stepped into his office, uncertain of her place. Now, she was a key player in his empire, trusted with more responsibilities, and forced to make decisions that would shape the future of their operations. It wasn't easy. Every day brought new challenges, new threats to deal with, and new players trying to undermine Luca's authority. But Maya had learned how to navigate this world, how to handle pressure, and how to use the power at her disposal. Luca had been right when he said she had more potential than she realized. The trust he had shown in her had paid off. But as she sat at her desk late one night, staring at the reports on her screen, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. There had been whispers in the business world, rumors of shifting alliances, of rivals making their own moves. Luca had kept things close to the chest, as always, but Maya had learned to read between the lines. The world they lived in was unpredictable, and no matter how much power Luca wielded, there was always the chance that things could slip out of control. Her phone buzzed, snapping her out of her thoughts. It was a message from Luca. "Meet me at the compound. We need to talk." The message was short, but Maya didn't need more than that. She grabbed her jacket and left her office, the weight of the unknown pressing down on her chest. As she drove through the quiet city streets, her mind raced. What could Luca want to discuss at this hour? She had just dealt with a major shipment issue earlier that day, but this felt different. The compound was on the outskirts of the city, far away from the public eye. It was a place where Luca could operate without interference, a fortress of sorts. Maya arrived at the compound, the gates opening automatically as she approached. She parked her car and stepped out, the air thick with tension. When she entered the building, Luca was waiting for her, standing by the large conference table, his back to her as he looked out the window. The room was dimly lit, the only light coming from a few lamps scattered around the room. He turned to face her as she entered, his expression unreadable. "Maya," he said, his voice low. "We have a situation." Maya's pulse quickened, but she kept her voice steady. "What kind of situation?" Luca didn't answer immediately. Instead, he motioned for her to sit. "There's been a shift in the power structure," he began. "Some of our allies are starting to make deals with our enemies. People we thought we could trust are turning against us." Maya's stomach dropped. "Who?" "I don't have all the details yet," Luca replied, his voice tight with frustration. "But I'm certain of one thing. Someone close to me is betraying us. And I need you to find out who." The words hung in the air between them. Maya felt the gravity of what he was asking. This wasn't just about business anymore. This was about loyalty, about trust. And betrayal in this world came with consequences. "How do you want me to do this?" she asked, her voice steady despite the rush of emotions swirling in her chest. Luca's eyes met hers, and for the first time, there was something almost vulnerable in his gaze. "I need you to use everything you've learned," he said quietly. "You know how to read people. You know how to move in the shadows. I need you to find out who is playing both sides before it's too late." Maya nodded slowly. This was the kind of task that would test everything she had learned, her ability to navigate the darkness, to trust her instincts, and to use her power without hesitation. "I'll do it," she said, her voice firm. "I won't let you down." Luca studied her for a moment, then nodded. "I know you won't." As Maya left the compound, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was about to uncover something much bigger than she anticipated. The world Luca had built was starting to crack, and the people she had come to trust were now part of the dangerous game. Her phone buzzed again as she walked toward her car. It was a list of names, people who might be involved, people who had access to sensitive information. Maya knew that she couldn't trust anyone until she had the answers. The next few days were a blur of covert meetings, secretive phone calls, and carefully orchestrated confrontations. Maya moved through this world with the precision she had learned from Luca, pulling on every thread, every piece of information. The more she dug, the more the web of betrayal unraveled. She had learned to trust her gut, and it was telling her that the person responsible was someone who had been under her nose the entire time. One evening, after hours of digging through documents and cross-referencing names, Maya found what she was looking for. It was a financial record, a series of transactions that didn't add up. One name kept popping up in the records, a name she hadn't thought to question before. A close associate of Luca, someone who had been with him from the beginning. It hit Maya like a punch to the gut. She didn't want to believe it, but the evidence was irrefutable. The betrayal was coming from within. She knew what she had to do. She couldn't let it go on any longer. That night, she returned to the compound, her mind made up. Luca was waiting for her when she arrived, his expression as unreadable as ever. "I found them," she said, her voice steady but filled with the weight of the revelation. Luca's gaze locked onto hers, his eyes hard. "Who?" "It's James," Maya said, her heart sinking as she spoke the name. "He's been feeding information to our rivals. He's the one behind the leaks." Luca's face remained impassive, but there was a brief flicker of something in his eyes. Anger, perhaps, or disbelief. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice low. Maya nodded. "I've seen the proof. It's all there." Luca stood up, his expression hardening. "Then it's time to deal with this." Maya felt the finality in his words. This was the moment when everything would change. There would be no more games, no more chances. The betrayal had to be dealt with, no matter who was involved. As they prepared to confront James, Maya realized that this was the last step in her transformation. She wasn't just a part of Luca's world anymore. She was shaping it, controlling it, and now, she would help decide who would stay and who would go. The cost of loyalty was steep, and tonight, James would learn just how steep it truly was.